What's going on, everyone? So, there is a growing belief that Jimmy Butler will be traded this season. That Miami's not going to run the risk of just losing him for nothing. They're not going to just take a bad trade or anything like that. But if they can get something for him, they'd prefer to get something for him. But regardless, this kind of feels like it's the end of the road for Jimmy Butler one way or another. Whether the Miami Heat end up trading him this season, he walks next season, which, I mean, he could opt in and stay. But does Miami want to take the risk of that? Does Miami want to take the chance, especially when Jimmy knows, I'm probably not going to get the money, and if I can sign a longer term and just get, even $100 million, 4 years, $25 million, or 4 years, $120 million, right? There's a team that would probably look at, man, playoff Jimmy, we might be able to make some noise. Problem with Jimmy Butler is I don't think he fits anywhere. 2, not every team can trade for him, and 3, he wants max money. Right? So, how many teams, 1, can give him max money, and 2, should give him max money, and 3, would be willing to give him max money, right? So, again, there's, these kind of caveats with it. However, you look at kind of Jimmy Butler, right? What teams kind of stand out and jump out in a potential trade for Jimmy Butler? I just think of teams that, would his play style and personality would fit, right? He's kind of a need for those teams. Right? And 2 teams that really jump out are the Memphis Grizzlies, the Indiana Pacers. Those are probably about it. There's arguments to be made for several other teams, but I just look at kind of the teams that are kind of in the thick of it. Right? I've seen the Thunder. I don't think he really makes sense for the Thunder. Right? He'd add some toughness, some experience. Right? He definitely would do some things for the Thunder, but I just think Thunder just need to stay the course. I think they are in the best position possible. Now, I've seen teams what about San Antonio? Not really big on Jimmy Butler in San Antonio. I don't hate it. Right? Kind of adds to kind of the aggressiveness that the Spurs are doing, and Wemby's so cheap right now, you could get away with keeping him at $40 million or whatever for a couple seasons. I don't know. I just don't think Jimmy Butler makes this now the Spurs are a contender. I just don't think that, right? There's very few teams, but a team like the Memphis Grizzlies and a team like the Indiana Pacers, those are 2 teams that I do think could use a guy like him, right? Both teams could use kind of a 3, and both of those teams could gain from his toughness, experience, right? Being in the playoffs, playoff Jimmy is obviously a thing, right? So starting with the Indiana Pacers, right? Obviously, it also depends on what you have to give up, what you end up having to move, right? There's factors that go into that. But, if you can work it out if you're Indiana, I do worry about the floor spacing for Indiana, however, right? Halliburton is really struggling this season. Siakam's not this, stellar lights. He has his stretches, he has his moments where he's knocking them down, but he can kind of be inconsistent at times shooting the 3 ball. Jimmy Butler's not really a guy that takes many threes, right? He's more of a mid-range in the elbow type guy. If you can keep Miles Turner, then you got a Miles Turner, but I think he fits the need that you have for Indiana. He brings that level of toughness that you need. He brings that experience and kind of the mental gymnastics, right? I prefer Brandon Ingram, if I'm being honest, for Indiana. 1, he's cheaper. 2, I think he will be cheaper long term. And 3, he's younger, right, and still fits the same need. So, if it was Jimmy Butler or Brandon Ingram, if I'm the Indiana Pacers, I'm taking Brandon Ingram all day, right? You can make the same argument for the Grizzlies, right? If I'm either of those teams, I would at least look into Brandon Ingram, right? He kind of makes some sense. But, if you're the Indiana Pacers, there is an argument for Jimmy Butler, right? His history against Boston, who, if you get to the conference finals again, you can probably play in Boston, right? Milwaukee, you look at the teams that you're probably going to have to go through. Jimmy Butler has a really good track record against, all of those teams. And you're in the East, so you have a better chance than you would be in the West, especially for Jimmy Butler, right? I think that the Pacers make a lot of sense. Obviously, it depends on what you have to give up, what you have to sell to go get him. But if you can just kind of hey, it's kind of salary match and then whatever else, and Miami's trying to retool and stuff, right? I don't know. You probably have to give up a Mathurin or something like that, but I think you'd be fine. I think you'd be okay, right? If you can keep Miles Turner, that'd be great, right? If you can keep kind of if you're main 4 can be Halliburton, Butler, Siakam, and Miles Turner, I think you're in really good shape. you might end up being probably the second or third best team in the East at that point and kind of get back on. Obviously, look, you need Tyrese Halliburton to kind of figure things out again. If he keeps, being a dump truck like he's been, he is starting to look better. He's starting to get better, but he's not been great this season. You really need him to kind of get back. But if you have that guy in Jimmy Butler, Pascal Siakam, where, he can kind of just be that playmaker, and it's just like, hey, Jimmy, tight game, close down the stretch, him and Siakam kind of be the 1A, 1B, or Jimmy doesn't care, right? Like, and that's kind of one of the beauties of Jimmy Butler is he's one of those guys, like, he doesn't, like, if he's giving you 5 points or 50 points, like, he doesn't care. He just wants to win, right? Like, whatever he's got to do. He's one of those stars that are very unselfish. A lot of stars really, like, hey, I have to get my 20, right? Jimmy Butler, like, he doesn't, like, hey, if I gave 10, 7, and 7, and we won, cool. I'm not going to complain about it, right? And like I said, he gives this kind of edge, that toughness. The other team is Memphis, right? Grit and grind, like Grizzlies, Memphis, right? Like, you think of that team and you think, like, Jimmy Butler and his personality and his play style. And they also have, like, Marcus Smart, who's kind of playing the three, but they could get off of him, right? Memphis has the players and pieces that they could use to go and get a Jimmy Butler, so he does make some sense for Memphis. I also think he'd be just a better fit for Memphis, right? Imagine if you have like Ja, Baines, Jimmy Butler, right, Triple J, and Zach Edey as your starting five. Like, they'd be tough, especially come playoff time. Jimmy Butler and Ja Morant and Triple J, like, I like, good luck beating them, right? And they could do something like Marcus Smart with Luke Kennard and whatever else. You probably have to give up something of value, right? So maybe you're throwing in a Aldama or something, which I know that they really like him, but getting Jimmy Butler and you're kind of making a push to go win a championship, right? If it works, or if you're close, like let's say you get to the conference finals and you lose in like a tough 6 or 7, right? You kind of figure it out, retool, give him a new contract. I think Memphis is probably the best place for Jimmy, right? Because just his style, what the team needs, where he'd fit, right? Like kind of what they need. They could use that toughness out on the perimeter, that defensive guy. Obviously, the three-point shooting isn't great, right? Jimmy's not really a guy that shoots a bunch of threes, but hey, Marcus Smart isn't this like great three-point shooter. I mean, some of his shot selection and decision-making at times is like infuriating, right? Like, even watching like Boston games, like even Dave Bennett Boston, like there are times where Marcus Smart just shoots you out of a game. You're just like, why does he keep shooting? Like, take him out of the game if you have to, right? Like, so I don't know. I think at that point, Memphis is tough, right? Like, Memphis is real tough. Again, there's arguments for several teams, but I think that those are the two teams personally that kind of are head and shoulders as far as like what would make sense for Jimmy. Number one, I think, would be Memphis. I think Memphis should at least inquire about it, should at least look into it. Again, if I'm either of those teams, I would probably prefer Brandon Ingram. I'd probably like Brandon Ingram. But there's also an argument that Jimmy's, experience and age and just tough, like he gives you more toughness than Brandon Ingram. Like, Brandon Ingram isn't really thought of as like this like tough guy, right? He's more of a finesse guy. Where Jimmy Butler, and again, I like Jimmy Butler being willing to do the dirty work, right? Like, Jimmy Butler's one of the few stars that he'll dive for loose ball. He'll take the hard foul, right? Like, he'll be a great. I love Jimmy Butler. I love watching Jimmy play, and he's a guy that I really do think could make sense, particularly for Memphis, just to give them back that toughness, right? Like, say whatever you want about Dillon Brooks, right? Dillon Brooks and his antics, he'd be a little obnoxious at times, but he did give Memphis that toughness, right? He was the guy that was willing to do all the dirty. Like, there are times and games and moments where you're like, man, they really could use Dillon Brooks, right? Like, I think Jimmy Butler is like the souped up charged version of that. Right? Bring that toughness, do the dirty work, right? Hit the shots, right? You can just give him the ball and, hey, just go win us this game, close this game out, right? Where teams are kind of honing in on Ja Morant, right? It's like, hey, Jimmy, make it happen, right? I also think Jimmy would, him as like that secondary star alongside Ja, I think would be really good, really great. And then you got good size, good length, good versatility, right? Like, I don't know. I think Jimmy Butler on Memphis, like, even just talking through this video, I'm just like, that's actually not, it's actually a pretty good idea there. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, and I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you like Jimmy Butler on the Pacers? Do you like Jimmy Butler on Memphis? Do you think like, both teams should stay away from Jimmy Butler? Do you think Jimmy Butler should go elsewhere? There's another team that kind of stands out. Like I said, none of these bottom teams, because he's not going to stay there. And then all of like the top contenders, I don't really think need them. To me, Jimmy's like kind of the teams that are kind of middle road. Right, the teams that are like, they're good, they're probably a playoff team, but really they could use kind of that toughness, that physicality, right? Something like that. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, and I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Let me know. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.